and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel. My name is Shaq and today we're going to be going through what I read in January. Let's go!
Hey! Listen!
So for some strange reason, I managed to read 10 books in January, and I was originally going to be doing a recent reads video every 3 months this year, but that didn't really turn out to be the case. So I decided to do monthly wrap-ups instead, depending on how my reading goes, to be honest. If I read an insignificant amount in 1 month, I will just put 2 months together, if that makes sense. This decision was made via Instagram and Twitter polls, so if you want to be a part of any video decision making or a part of any videos in the future, go ahead and follow me over there. My Bookstagram is just Stories with Shaq, but my Twitter is @_ShaqAttack because it's named after my main channel. It's very confusing, but I do have two aliases online. Just call me Shaq, it's all good, it's all fine. But yeah, let's just go ahead and talk about all of the books I read in January. I'm really excited because I read again 10 of them, and I'm just excited to share all of my thoughts and opinions on 10 of them. Let's just get started. So the first book that I managed to get to this year, and also in January, was Grown by Tiffany D. Jackson. So we follow Enchanted in Grown as she is trying to make it as a black music artist when she comes across Corey Fields, who promises to make her dreams come true, make her a big star, and sign her loads of record deals and make her really successful. This doesn't really go to plan, and after things come tumbling down for Enchanted and Corey Fields, Enchanted is one of the main suspects when Corey Fields is suddenly murdered. Ultimately, Grown is all about the black experience when it comes to the criminal justice system and going through rape, sexual assault and abusive relationships, and kind of for women in general to go through this and what it is truly like. There are a lot of content warnings for Grown because of how much of a hard-hitting story it is. So if you're sensitive to abuse or rape or sexual assault of any kind, child abuse, kidnapping, and also drug addiction as well, you probably want to really be careful going into Grown, but I would recommend doing it because it is such an empowering and important read. So I gave Grown overall a 4 out of 5 stars because I found it, again, heartbreaking and empowering and inspiring, and it was a hard read, but it's supposed to be like that and it's supposed to make you think, and made me think it did. I thought Tiffany Jackson's writing was sublime throughout. I thought it was so well written. Tiffany D. Jackson has prose like no other author I have ever read. Representation of what it is like being in one of these relationships is incredibly accurate to my own experiences anyway. I don't think these sorts of relationships are talked about nearly enough in as much detail as it is in Grown, so I really appreciated that representation and could relate heavily. Obviously I can't speak for the race representation because I am white, but I've heard from a lot of Own Voices reviewers on Goodreads and other platforms that is done really well, and this is Own Voices as well, so Tiffany D. Jackson has done a great job with this overall and hit a lot of checkpoints in my personal reading taste. So yeah, I really liked Grown and I would highly recommend it if you can withstand its triggering natures, because it is really worth it. My next book actually is a non-fiction book. I did actually want to read a lot more non-fiction this year, and I mentioned that in my January TBR, so I'll leave that linked down below. But the next book is Overcoming Bulimia, Nervosa and Binge Eating, which is the 3rd edition of a self-help guide using CBT basically by Peter Cooper. Overall I gave this book a 3.5 out of 5 stars because I found that it was really interesting because of its format. So we basically go through what bulimia is as an eating disorder. I am currently in recovery for an eating disorder of some kind. I'm not actually sure what the diagnosis would be at this current moment, it doesn't really matter, but I still have trouble with eating anyway. So half of this book is an information guide on bulimia, what the symptoms are, what implications come from it, and the diagnoses and what that means and stuff. And then the second half of this is actually a self-help manual for when you are in recovery or you're working with a GP or dietitian. So I have bookmarked this and I have read the majority of this, so I'm counting it as a read, but I thought I would wait and hold off until I was in therapy of some kind, and now I am putting the ends of that together. I'm being paired with a therapist and I should be starting very soon, so I should be able to actually finish the manual side of this with a therapist as Peter Cooper suggests. But overall I give this a 3.5 just because I found it really interesting and I loved learning about the bulimia and eating disorders in general, so I can recognize it in myself and other people as well. I related heavily to some of the stuff, the symptoms that are in here, and it kind of called me out on my toxic behavior, made me more aware of them. Obviously there are also content warnings for this book as well for binge eating. Even though it is a non-fiction book, I still did find it quite triggering. There's also touching upon relapse and also other mental illnesses such as anxiety and depression. Although this book book did help me in many ways. I can't really help but notice all the flaws in it as well. I feel like the pronouns that are used throughout this book are very binary. Peter Cooper refuses to use they/them pronouns and just goes for she/him, but then refers back to the pronouns for she/her in the rest of the book because women are more likely to experience these disorders, which is true and fine, but he could just use they. The they pronoun exists, Peter Cooper, let's go. I feel like using they/them pronouns would have improved the book because it would have made the book more gender neutral and maybe more people would have related to it, so people who are cisgendered but also non-binary and trans and everything as well. I also feel as though in the first half of this book, the section on the information around bulimia, for a book that is supposed to be getting rid of binge eating and bulimia disorder in people and helping them get rid of it, they use the word fat as a negative adjective quite a lot in this, and I'm really hoping they redeem themselves. I actually, in the second half of this, in like the self-help manual side of this, I did see a like a chapter called the word fat and the relationships and stuff we have with it, so maybe it'll redeem it in that like chapter, but from what I read of it, it used it in the wrong way, and for a book that is in this nature that I found like just really gross and not good at all. But aside from my critiques, I really did enjoy this. It did help me discover more of my triggers and my toxic behaviour when it comes to my body and how to look after myself, and I am quite excited to get to the self-help side of this manual and working through it with a therapist. My next read of January was a poetry collection, and that is Homebody by Rupi Kaur. This is Rupi Kaur's newest poetry collection. She also wrote The Sun and Her Flowers and also Milk and Honey as well. If you don't know, then Rupi Kaur normally writes poetry about weight and self-love, abusive/toxic relationships, and also the experience of being an immigrant. And because all of these subject matters are very personal, it makes this very triggering, so also content warning for all the things above that I have just mentioned, and also B, it makes rating this especially hard because I don't want to take away, you know, Rupi Kaur's experiences of being an immigrant or her experiences of being in an abusive relationship. Any critiques I have of Homebody, they aren't reflective on Rupi Kaur's own experiences and her like writing about that. I actually encourage that, and I really am like respectful of her for doing that. It takes balls and guts to do that. However, I can still critique the book without taking away from her experiences. I did give Homebody by Rupi Kaur a 3 out of 5 stars because poetry always just has a very special place in my heart, because reading about people's pain and experiences in art is just something I love to do. It's why I'm a reader. I love poetry so much. I think that's kind of like an unpopular opinion, but I don't really care. I think that Rupi Kaur's poetry is a really nice starting point into the world of poetry, but I feel like personally for me, my reading tastes have become a little bit more sophisticated in terms of like poetry and the things I like to consume. I just expected this to be a lot more like different than the first 2 volumes. It feels like we're just repeating the same poems in the same style about the same things. I just kind of was expecting something different and something more from Rupi Kaur, but this is definitely still a good poetry collection, and I obviously respect Rupi Kaur so much. She is so talented and I wish I could write like her. However, I just think that my tastes have moved past this simplistic, maybe uncomplicated style of poetry. It is still really good for getting into poetry though. If you are interested, would highly recommend Rupi Kaur's poetry. Next we do have a reread. Again, in my January TBR, I made it quite clear that I would like to get to more rereads this year, and my first reread of the year was Renegades by Marissa Meyer. This is the first book in the Renegade series. We are surrounding Nova and Adrian and their relationship. One is from the Renegades and one is from the Anarchists. Nova absolutely hates Renegades, and so as she's an anarchist, she is sent into the Renegades to act as a spy and try and take them down from the inside out. But as she's trying to be a spy and trying to take them down and get them information for the anarchists, she starts to fall for Renegade and starts to think that maybe they aren't so bad after all. My reread of this was just amazing. It's everything that I expected it to be and more. I was quite scared and kind of hesitant to go back into this, but I regret not doing this sooner, to be honest. I just think that the binary opposition of this is so well done. It's so interesting and it blurs the good and evil binary opposition so well. So well done. I also love the split perspective in this, how we get both sides of the binary opposition. So we get stuff from the Renegades point of view with Adrian, and then stuff from the anarchist point of view with Nova, and we just don't know who the good guys are, like truly who the good guys are and who the bad guys are. It's amazing and so well done. So for that, I gave it, again, I think a 4 stars. The only thing I will say was at times it's kind of hard to suspend my disbelief for this, because at some points Nova should definitely have been caught by the Renegades, but she wasn't for the sake of the story to continue, and it feels like the Renegades are painted as these people who are really smart, really intelligent, and like the best superheroes of their time, but they can't figure out that Nova is a spy and she is the nightmare. It feels like it's a little bit coincidental, but I still can suspend my disbelief. It just makes it harder to do so. I still really do enjoy this, and you know, Renegades, they're corrupt. Maybe they're lying. Who knows? Are they really smart? I don't really know. But yeah, that just is kind of one thing that always gets on my nerves when I'm reading Renegades. Something really small and not really like detrimental to my reading experience. So next we do have a book on the darker side, and that is Heroine or Heroine by Mindy McGuinness. So this is a book that deals a lot with drug addiction, so content warning for that, as I'm going to be discussing some of those themes, and also going into this you will probably need to be aware of that as well. You'll also need to be aware that there are various scenes of relapse and instances of death, so do be careful of that one going into it. It's very, very, very dark and subject heavy. I still did enjoy this though, despite its heaviness. I gave it a 3.5. Heroine by Mindy McGuinness is a chilling story about softball star Mickey, who is in, unfortunately, a terrible accident with her best friend. They are both on the softball team and they both have like really important games coming up, and so Mickey subdues her pain with medication that she has been prescribed to by the doctor. But when this medication runs out, she's not really ready to, you know, experience the pain and go into softball at a steadier pace. She wants to rush her recovery, get back into the league, and so she goes on avenues, kind of develops a drug addiction in trying to numb her pain and act like a normal person. I have never been addicted to any kind of substances, but I have had people in my life, both past and present, that have dealt with substance abuse, and it was really both chilling for me and heart-wrenching and also enlightening for me to see what that experience is truly like for someone who is going through it. So although I can't speak to the representation of that and what it is like to go through that, I have heard other people that have been through those kind of things and said that this was really good, a really good depiction of that, and I can imagine so, because it honestly was heartbreaking and it gave me a whole new perspective. I think Mindy McGuinness did a really good job of making her story come to life. The dialogue, characters and events never seem like they're unbelievable. It's all really, really good and well done and well written. You root for Mickey, but you also recognise that she's a terrible person because what she's doing for drugs isn't a nice thing, and I think that takes talent to do, to make such a morally grey character and you still want to be her friend and root for her. You almost want her to get the money to get her drugs so that she can, you know, be a better person, but also, you know, the addiction isn't a good thing, and I think that really encapsulates what it's like to be addicted to substances, and it's just such a good way of writing. Mindy McGuinness did truly such a good job, and they are so talented, oh my gosh. As well as addiction, there's also deals with other mental health topics as well, such as anxiety, and I really found that useful because I have anxiety and thought the writing was really good. But despite my praise, I did kind of feel a disconnect from the story in some sort of way. I do feel like Mindy McGuinness talked a little bit about relapse, but not much, and I would have liked to have seen that more developed in the story. But no matter what, I still did enjoy my reading experience, if you can say like I enjoyed it. It was very, very dark and heavy, but I did appreciate the read and would recommend if you can stomach it. Next, we do have Legendborn by Tracy Dewan. Unfortunately, I DNF this because I'm not a retelling person. I didn't realise this was a retelling until I filmed a TBR video, and I thought I could stomach it, but I absolutely can't. This is all about Brie, whose mother has just died from an incident, and she goes to like this school who has secret societies that are like King Arthurian, and she realises that her trauma like develops these feelings inside of her that invoke like magic and things like that. The writing is excellent, and I loved the exploration of trauma and what it does to a person of what I saw of it in Legendborn, but unfortunately I just couldn't move past the King Arthur stuff because I'm just not a retelling person. It's just not for me. Unfortunately, I couldn't enjoy this the way I wanted it to, and it just is really unfortunate. I will be unhauling this, but my sister really likes King Arthur retellings and stuff, so I will be giving this to her. So it's gonna have a home, just not on my shelves, unfortunately. I really wanted to like this, but I just didn't, and I DNF'd. I'm really sorry. Next, we do have my next read of January, and that is Here is the Beehive by Sarah Crossan. I saw this over on channel at 155 Books a channel. I always get so flustered saying her name. This is a book told in verse about a couple who are having an affair, and unfortunately the man in the affair dies. And so we are left with our main character, Anna, who is recovering and mourning this affair that happened in secret and no one else can know about her trauma and her mourning. This has a lot of content warnings in it as well. Apparently January was a content warning kind of month, but this obviously has like talks of cheating and like a failed marriage. There's also a lot of like alcoholism in this because it is set in Ireland, and that is really bad over there. There's also talks of abortion and miscarriage as well, so be careful of those things when going into this. Obviously this was quite a challenging read for me. I gave it a 3 stars just because I find the characters really unlikable, and obviously I think they're meant to be that way. It just grated me up the wrong way, and it just added to like negative things of my reading experience. I did, however, love again the representation of this and the like the abusive relationship that Anna goes through, both in her marriage and also the affair that she is mourning. Just a really interesting book. I would recommend this if you can stomach the morally grey characters, but for me they just got on my tits. They got on such on my nerves. Next, we do have a reread of Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. This is the first book in the Infernal Devices series. Chain of Iron is coming out in March, so I wanted to reread the Infernal Devices and also Chain of Gold before that comes out. But this is basically telling of the founders of the Shadowhunter world, who are basically like angelical beings who protect mundanes from demons and downwards and other like mystical adventures basically. And we follow Tess, Jem and Will in this first installment as we get to know Tessa and her ability to shapeshift, and who the Magister, who is trying to like marry her, truly is, and all that good stuff. I love this book. I won't be talking too much about this because I do just think that I've waffled on about this series on my channel already. I really enjoyed it. Give it a 5 out of 5 stars. I love this world so much. I will leave my Goodreads review for all these, but also this down below, because I think I talk about it in extensive detail, and I just feel like I've waffled on so much in this video alone, and also about this series on my channel as a whole. So yeah, I really enjoy this. 5 out of 5 stars. I love it. It's chef's kiss. It's great. Next, we do have an unexpected read. I didn't actually anticipate reading this month, and that is You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. This is basically all about Liz, our main protagonist, who is black and she goes to a predominantly white school, and she is wanting to get out of her hometown, get out of her high school and go to university, but unfortunately her funding falls through for studying university and her dream course. So she comes up with the bright idea to run for prom queen because the winner of prom queen gets given a scholarship to a university of their choice, and so that would be perfect for her as she has no funding left. But she does meet Mac, aka Amanda, and they have this really sapphic romance, and it's all about, like, you know, coming out and, you know, being proud about her black identity and also her being a queer woman, and also the struggles that come with kind of like living up to expectations and keeping up appearances, and how like her friends are basically just all arseholes. I gave this a 3.5 because although I did enjoy it, I kind of felt disconnected from my reading experience because I feel like just prom isn't that big of a deal to me. I think my British is showing in that respect because prom just isn't as big of a deal over here as it is in America, and I found the action just kind of hard to believe and hard to get invested in because of that. But I did actually switch to the audiobook around the 150 page mark and just kind of like suspend my disbelief like actively a little bit more, and I did actually enjoy the story. I enjoyed the sapphic representation. I also enjoyed Liz as the main character, but I do feel like we were surrounded by some really interesting people, like really interesting characters, and we never truly got to like see them in their flesh and like get to know them properly. This also has two tropes in it that I absolutely hate. Number one is like one of the best friends lying to the other one, and like the main character just forgives them because they just want to, and it's like really weird. And number two, the characters just don't communicate well in any aspect of anything, and a lot of the problems in this book could have been solved by a little bit of communication. To be honest, despite it being quite YA trope heavy, I feel like the diversity in this really like refreshes the tropes, honestly, within it. It's really good, it's really cool. And the last book in this wrap up is Saga Volume 1, which is a reread for me by Brian K. Vaughan and Fiona Staples. I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. This is basically like a Romeo and Juliet kind of retelling in space, in a warring space. Our main characters, Elena and Marco, are currently running from their families as they come from opposite sides of a space war. Elena is part of the Wings and Marco is part of the Horns, and they fall in love while Marco is in the Wings' captivity, and they end up conceiving a really forbidden love child, and they are going on this intergalactic journey to save Hazel, their love child, from all the people who want to kill them. So I really did enjoy this. I love how it brings politics in like everyday life and also politics of this science fiction world into the narrative. I think it's really well done. I also just really like the characters. I think they're really well developed, and it just feels like coming home. It feels so real and like I am invested straight away. However, I do think that the language used in this is quite jarring. I feel like it is quite over sexualized at times. At one point, one of the main characters is offered like a sex slave, and it turns out that she's like a 6-year-old girl, and that is used as like a shock factor, and it's just not, it's just grossing. I think that's the point, but like pretty jarring. So yeah, I give this a 4 out of 5 stars. Really enjoyed my reread, and I will be excited to carry on with my reread throughout the rest of the volumes. So yeah, that is all of the books on my January wrap up. I've got no time to finish this because my camera battery is about to die, but I hope that you enjoy. Give me a thumbs up and my channel and subscribe if you would like to. Hope you join me in my next video, and I will see you there. Hope you enjoy any books or productivity activity you managed to get read and done, and after so hard, I'll see you next time. Goodbye.